Hello, and welcome to Stock Takes with Katana. This podcast series is all about growth strategies, tips, and advice from experts for businesses dealing with physical inventory. Today, we have a very special guest, Mark. Mark is head of tech partnerships at Katana, but before that, he has over 20 years of experience building out technology, ecosystems, marketplaces, and ensuring that businesses do get that pool of experts that they need to grow. But I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, you say it like that. You kind of did all the explanation for me. But yeah, for the last couple of years, I've worked with some leading edge technology companies that focus in on inventory, order management, and manufacturing. And in between all of that as well, I did have a hiatus for a year and a half where I had my own consulting practice where I worked with about 20 different direct-to-consumer brands on their inventory needs.
So nowadays, multi-channel selling and diversifying those revenue streams is increasingly important.
Yes.
So what are the key themes that you have seen in your experience?
Yeah, so the first thing that comes up, it's really interesting because as you're expanding out, you're usually doing it because you see money, you see opportunity to make more money. So, using the example of you have your own product, you're crushing it on Shopify, and you want to expand to, let's say, Amazon. And at that point, you're trying to figure out all the strategies to get on and get listed and do everything proper there. And the thing that you sometimes neglect is that customer experience and understanding actually, how much inventory do I have? So inventory syncing is actually one of those pieces that you have to pay really close attention to. And then the second piece against it, which is also kind of interesting too, because, maybe inventory is not sexy and it's like maybe it should be because with every channel, you have to kind of think of it as its own personality. Kind of the same sort of motion that how would you attack Shopify would be different than you would attack Amazon again, as an example, on the marketing side. It's kind of the same thing with inventory, how you list your products, how you do everything around it, and you have to have that consideration in play there too. So those are a couple of the things that you need to like really consider when you're starting out and going omni-channel. And then the third one that comes up a lot too is that there's usually a rush, right? So again, you might have this inkling that all of a sudden it's like, oh, I see these bigger orders coming in. I can kind of go wholesale now, so I should do that. And it's like Costco's come knocking. I could do that at the same time, and I'm doing my Amazon. And you try to do everything all at once, and it becomes a big mess. So another thing to look out for is like trying to nail one at a time. So once you nail your first one, then go off and kind of do it more sequentially than trying to like do it all in one shot.
Mm-hmm. Are there any other bigger pitfalls that you've seen that businesses have kind of gone through or made the mistake when trying to do this too quickly or in the wrong way?
Yeah, it's actually something I'm pretty passionate around. It's forecasting. I'm a bit of a numbers geek on some of this stuff too, where oftentimes when, especially if you don't have kind of the right system set up for your operations, is that you're not putting enough emphasis on the fact that like you might not have enough stock to actually help and to support the customer demand as it comes through, and you might not be watching it with like a sophisticated system in place there. And those things can just be kind of detrimental, especially when you're starting out and trying to like expand into a new channel. And then the other piece is around the implementation of all the different systems that you might be looking at, right? So again, as you're growing, the importance around building out kind of this best in breed tech stack, and for background around it, a lot of companies that are growth companies that are starting out, you're going to start in one channel. You're probably going to be maybe using that channel to manage your inventory. You might be using some Excel spreadsheets. You might have your accounting system elsewhere. You might have your purchasing person doing things all over the place. But as you're kind of growing out that kind of network effect and you're trying to like build these things out, you really have to pay attention to kind of all the different mechanisms and making sure that you're building a solution on something where they all kind of talk to each other. So this is where there are a lot of solutions out there around inventory order management that kind of bridge the gap for any business from like 1 to 250 million even before you have to think about maybe looking at an ERP system. So for growth companies, it's really important to start looking into systems like Katana.
Mm-hmm. And when it comes to kind of data and keeping that data accurate, because that's kind of the foundational element of setting up that best in breed tech stack.
Yeah.
So what are some ways that businesses can ensure that their data is accurate and that over time that the kind of accuracy and levels are well maintained?
Yeah, great question. Almost answered with the last one, where it's like it's always these stretch goals, right? Where you're kind of like, when do I need to expand the systems? Because it is tough. It's change management, and oftentimes business owners don't love it. It's something where it's like they're just focused on what they're great at, which is usually making their product, selling their product, marketing their product. That's their strengths. So at a certain point, though, there's going to be some level of stress, right? So it could be anything like small, like, or kind of big, where it's like you're a perishable brand, and all of a sudden now there's actually a need to have certain tracking mechanisms so that you know when a product's about to go bad, or the build out of that product's going to go bad, and you actually have to keep track of that sort of thing, right? But very similarly with omnichannel, it's kind of the same thing, where at a certain point, as you're expanding out, you do need to have a system of records so that you know where inventory is at. And potentially that inventory might be at different locations or at different warehouses, or you might not be fulfilling your own inventory as you expand out. So all these things, these mechanisms, kind of put you in this space where it's like you really need a system of record and a source of truth for inventory, and that's when an inventory management system becomes really, really important.
So when it comes to diversification, there's obviously the different channels that different businesses are using. Maybe it's kind of new tooling, new ways to store their inventory data. But we're seeing a lot of, direct to consumer brands that are, as you mentioned, kind of seeing the opportunity to go wholesale, and sometimes vice versa. But when it comes to building out a B2B model in parallel with that B2C, what are some ways that businesses can go about doing that, and why?
Yeah, it's interesting because I think you definitely have to be strategic, would probably be the first thing. So you definitely need to first start thinking about it from the perspective of like, who's the customer that I'm going to be going after? I have to think about my pricing strategy. So all of a sudden, you need to have some options, some tiering, and discounting available to create those right incentives. But you also have to compare that to the market as well. You also have to think about, again, your technology stack. So depending on what platform you're on right now. So use the example of Shopify. If you're trying to go wholesale and make that experience automated with a website, you need to be a Shopify Plus customer to have that capability. Or there's different apps that you can plug into. So one of those apps is something called SparkLayer. So it basically automatically mimics your Shopify store, and it gives that wholesale capability set. So you don't need to like kind of completely replatform and try to find something different. So some of these things are really important. And then back to the customer, the B2B customer is just different than the B2C customer in terms of some of your product lines might need some level of customization or certain things that are a little bit different. So these are some of the things that you need to consider out, and kind of the same thing here too. It's like looking at a CRM tool that kind of looks at your wholesale customer a little bit different than your direct customer that you might be or have been working with.
So when it comes to actually making that jump, when is it really not a good time to actually go into that B2B space?
Yeah, if you're cheap. So all kidding aside, I think it's like you need actual real pain. So for a lot of companies, you can probably make do with, depending on the complexity of your business, you can make do with a system and some manual workarounds. But I think there's a moment where you're growing past a certain point, and if you're spending more and more time where things are being missed, so orders are being missed, the purchases to make your product are being missed. So if things are actually impacting your customers, I think usually that's a good time to start looking at bring a system in-house.
Hmm. And what are some other pieces of advice or tips or kind of smaller things that are a little bit less drastic than replatforming or finding a new solution that businesses can do if they're looking to either go omni-channel or switch up their, end customer?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think there's a couple of things that you can do. It's like even if you don't have a system of record, or if you do, is you basically could like ensure that you've got a certain stock level take for certain products, especially your most popular products, so that you're always kind of in a good spot there. And you can even potentially go a step further and give yourself kind of email alerts. So if product goes past a certain point and the lead time to get more of that product is just going to take a long time to do, you can kind of like create some of those pieces together. And then some of the other things you can do too is you can actually separate separate out your inventory by location, so you can have specific inventory in different locations by the channels that you're selling to. Again, especially if you don't have a system of record starting out, those are things that are usually like little tidbit things that you can start out that can put you in a better spot.
And any sort of final pieces of advice or words of wisdom?
I've got a lot, Sarah. But if I were to say the biggest piece is don't try to do it all by yourself, and hire an expert depending on where you're looking to go. It can save you so much time. And I think I mentioned it earlier too. It's like implementation of these inventory systems is incredibly important, because if you do it right, it can be a game changer. And if you do it wrong, it could still lead to other problems, and then it's time wasted on that, and then you're looking to re-platform to something else. So I highly suggest that, depending on the problem that you're trying to solve, if you're trying to solve the problem of entering Amazon, like hire somebody or an Amazon agency that can help you. If it's something in the logistical area of trying to figure out your inventory system of record, there's a lot of partners out there that can kind of help you with that sort of thing. So then on my side too, it's like I acted as a like remote purchaser for a bit for a forecasting company that I was doing some consulting for, and it's kind of the same thing where you can kind of like be smarter with your money and make sure something works with somebody who knows what they're doing, and get yourself in a better spot there. So those are one big tidbit is, do that. And then, like I said before, don't be cheap around it. Like, it's okay to spend the money, be committed to it, get it right. And then there's so much savings down the line. So that would be my biggest recommendation.
Very wise words.
I try, Sarah. I try. Yes.
But thank you so much, Mark.
Yeah.
Really appreciate it. And I hope everyone listening does as well.